You know, there are a lot of entertainers that are multi-talented with gifts that people wish they had. When you're a good actor and a good singer, sky's the limit. You always gonna have a job in Hollywood, probably. And I always thought that Nell Carter was one of the best entertainers with that gift. Nell Carter had a beautiful, unique singing voice. She was a short little thing now, standing only 4'11", but when it came to acting and singing, she always stood tall. Some of her friends say that she could remember anything and really didn't need a script to say her lines. Wow, that's how good she was. She was funny, talented, and could do it all, and she loved everybody. Race didn't matter to her. But she dealt with a lot of tragedies all through her life, though, man. But she always got through it. But I think the trauma from her childhood really impacted her for the rest of her life. She was one of the most well-known black actresses in the 80s and early 90s. And I always wanted to redo this story because I did it back in the day. It was short. But I want to get into a little bit more details this time around. So let's get into the Nell Carter story, right? Now, Nell Carter's birth name is Nell Ruth Hardy, and she was born September 13th, 1948, in Birmingham, Alabama. She was the fifth born of 9 kids from her mother, Edna Mae Humphrey, and her father, Horace Hardy, who was an Army sergeant. Now, at the early age of 2 years old, she had witnessed some tragedy in her family when she actually saw her father electrocuted to death after he accidentally stepped on a live power line in a field next to their house. Wow. And the family was devastated after losing him like that. But, from the very start, she loved music. And around the age of 7 years old, she had won the talent show at her school. She loved to sing and would sing at church and on a local gospel radio show. She was in a little vocal group called the Y Teens. She was already like a local celebrity in the town because of her talent. Some of the artists that inspired her growing up was Dinah Washington, B.B. King, Elvis Presley, Doris Day, the Andrews Sisters, Johnny Mathis, Cleo Lane, and Barbra Streisand, and many more. She was different from all her peers because she really wanted to be an opera singer, while her friends and the other kids all wanted to be teachers and nurses, but she wanted to be an opera singer. Now, by the time she turned 15 years old, she ended up joining in a singing group called the Renaissance Ensemble. And they would perform in a bunch of coffee houses and bars locally. But then she would face more trauma at that age that she had to deal with the rest of her life, probably. She ended up being sexually assaulted. Now, the story goes with that incident. So around the age of 16 years old, Nell was with a group of friends at a club where her and her singing group, they usually perform at this club, but it was far away from where they stayed at, right? And, after the club was over and time to go, she had saw a guy that she knew, and he offered her a ride back home. And he ended up sexually assaulting her at gunpoint. And from that incident, she became pregnant. And the crazy part is, when she went home and told her mother and everything what had happened, her mother made it seem like it was all her fault. Called her a slut and everything and told her just to keep quiet about the whole thing. Wow. Even the church looked at her differently and didn't want to have nothing to do with her. That's crazy, man. And they never got the police involved because back then, they kept things quiet and didn't want everybody in their business like that. In an interview, Nell said that, her and her brother were raised by their grandmother and were never really wanted by their birth mother. Wow. She said they was unwanted by their mother. But, the good thing was Nell had an older sister, and her older sister took the baby and raised her. Yeah, she had an older sister that was 12 years older than her, who took the baby girl Tracy in and raised her up because it was just too much for Nell to handle at that time, being so young. And for years that Nell had claimed that her daughter was the result of a teenage marriage, but the truth was she was raped at gunpoint. Sad, man. Like Florence Ballard, man. The same way from the Supremes. But the crazy part is, here's the crazy part though. That same year, right, Nell lost four of her friends to a church bombing, which was done by the KKK when they planted 19 sticks of dynamite attached to a timing device beneath the steps located on the east side of the church. Nell said she was on the steps of her porch when she saw all the smoke rising from the church. And that incident really messed her up, man, she said. Spike Lee did a movie on that. Four Little Girls is what it's called. If y'all want to get more details on that story, on that church bombing, because it's very sad, man. Even Martin Luther King called it one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. Wow. Four Little Girls is the name of that movie, y'all. But anyway, so after that whole thing, she had a baby and everything. She graduated from high school, and around the age of 19 years old, she left Alabama and headed to New York to really make it as a singer with only $300 in her pocket. And when she got to New York, though, she attended the School of Drama, which was established by NBA Basketball Hall of Famer Bill Russell. And she also changed her last name from Hardy to Carter. She started going by Nell Carter. And once and in New York, right, in the evening, she had to survive. She had to make some money. So she started singing in coffee houses and clubs just to make some money. And that's when one day somebody in the crowd suggested that she should do Broadway. And she did it. In 1971, she landed her first role on Broadway, which was a play called Soon. And that play had some up-and-coming actors in there too. Richard Gere was in that. Vicky Sue Robinson, if y'all remember her, she had that #1 disco song called Turn the Beat Around. And Marion Ramsey, who y'all probably know from the Police Academy movies, was also in that play. Nell said her and Marion Ramsey used to be roommates around that time. And Nell also had went to London to get more drama training too. Now, after that, she just appeared in some more stage plays like Dude. Another play was called Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. But here's the crazy part. She had a chance to be in The Wiz and the other play called Bubbling Brown Sugar. But she turned those roles down for some other plays that didn't even last long. And she said she regret not doing The Wiz. I bet she would have been great in The Wiz too. But she did appear in a stage musical called Jesus Christ Superstar. But the one play that would change her life forever was the Broadway musical play called Ain't Misbehaving, with actress Irene Cara in there. And that play, when she did that play, that was a very successful play. And for her performance, she won a couple awards, but the one that really counts is winning the Tony Award for Best Performance by a Featured Actress in a Musical that year, 1978. Here's the crazy part. At that award show, right, she won that Tony Award, but at that award show was the first time she tried cocaine. And when she tried it, she said she was hooked and said it was the most amazing thing in the world. Before she said she used to just eat and drink a lot to satisfy herself, but when she hit that cocaine, she said she loved it, man. And she said it was a famous celebrity. She didn't want to name who it was, but it was a famous celebrity who got her to try it. Now, that same year, She was cast as Effie White in the Broadway musical play called Dreamgirls, which was originally called One Night Only, and then changed again to Project Number 9 with actress Cheryl Lee Ralph and Loretta Devine. But during the production of that play, Nell ended up getting the opportunity to appear in the ABC soap opera called Ryan's Hope, and she did 11 episodes as the character named Ethel Green. When she took that role right on Ryan's Hope, they shelved that play called Project Number 9, but years later, it was picked back up and renamed Dreamgirls, and that's when they replaced her with singer Jennifer Holliday as Effie. Now, in 1979, she landed a role in the movie Hair as one of the singers, and she also had a role on the NBC comedy series called The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo as Sergeant Hildy Jones. And she appeared in 15 episodes on that show. She actually got the show ratings up when she became part of that cast. But her next TV role would be the one that everybody remembers her from. Give Me a Break. Man, I love Give Me a Break. My mom used to love Give Me a Break too. Now, how she got that role as the housekeeper for a widowed police officer trying to raise his 3 daughters, how she got that role, it really was, see now, at the time, NBC had the shows The Facts of Life and Different Strokes, which were doing okay in the ratings, but they needed a show that could take them to the top. And some of the higher ups at NBC had saw Nell in the Ain't Misbehaving play and thought she was great. And they thought she would be perfect as the housekeeper for Give Me a Break. And they wanted just to build the whole show around her talent. And she jumped at the opportunity because, and it was a lot of tension going on with her and the cast members from the play anyway at that time. They was already saying that she was difficult to work with. So when they came to her with the Give Me a Break sitcom, she was ready. She took the opportunity, said, yeah, let's do it. And on October 29th, 1981, Give Me a Break debuted on NBC. And when the show first aired, when it first came out, the ratings were not really that great. And a lot of critics had a lot to say about it, but they decided to keep going on with the Give Me a Break sitcom because they really believed in Nell's talent. She was the talent. And she did receive some backlash from the black community for playing a housekeeper. Black people felt that she was portraying the stereotype role of a maid. But Nell said anyone who denies their heritage doesn't deserve their destiny. Her grandmother was a maid, and she still raised her and her siblings and put them through college, so she didn't care about that. Now on the show Give Me a Break, right, around 1982, she ended up winning an Emmy for the television version of the play Ain't Misbehaving. She won an Emmy for the television version. And that same year, she ended up getting married to a rich businessman from Austria named George Kronicki, who she was dating a couple years before. He had came into her life at a time when she was really down and going through it over a past relationship, to the point that she was about to have a nervous breakdown. She needed to see a psychiatrist in every city she went to. That's how heartbroken she was over some guy before she met George Kronicki. And Dr. George Kronicki was the one that helped her through that hard times. And they started dating, and then they got married. But the crazy part is, on their wedding night, she said she realized that, Nell said she realized that she made a mistake marrying him because she didn't want to be in a committed relationship. She didn't want to be committed to anyone, she said. Wow. And after just 18 months, her husband left her because her drug problem was out of control. He didn't know she had a drug problem because he worked out of town a lot. So they really didn't see each other that much. But her drug problem was out of control. At this point, her drug use was so out of control that Nell said She started making millions of dollars while doing Give Me a Break, about 50,000 a week from the show, and she was spending 2,200 a day on cocaine. Wow, a day. She said she would do cocaine all night, and then she would start drinking about 3 in the morning just to get to sleep because she had to be on the Give Me a Break set at 6 a.m. in the morning. But she would wake up around 5:30 in the morning and start doing coke again. That's how bad. That's bad, man. That's how bad she was hooked on that. She was gone off that coke, but she loved it. Even though the more she kept doing it, it was making her gain weight. It was making her get, making her bigger. And also making her attitude crazier too. But she said she would just eat, do the TV show, go home, lock herself in the room, and just snort cocaine all day. Wow. But then things really got bad when she was found passed out at her house one day. Apparently, people at the NBC studios didn't hear from her for several days, right? So they went to her house and they had to break into her Beverly Hills home. And when they did that, they had found her on the floor, unconscious and wearing only a mink coat. And they rushed her to the hospital and she had to go to rehab. And it worked for a while. Rehab worked for a while. She was clean and she even converted to Judaism. But, she relapsed. She relapsed again. And just about her entire time while doing the TV show Give Me a Break, she was hooked on cocaine. And she even attempted suicide. Wow, man. Now, some of the staff and cast members say that they knew she was on drugs because she was always in the bathroom and would come out hype and energetic, but they never said nothing about it. They said it wasn't none of their business. But that's when her good friend Liza Minnelli, she stepped in though. Liza Minnelli stepped in to get her some help after she saw Nell at a concert in London looking just a mess, and ended up taking her to a drug rehab in Minnesota. And that rehab worked for her because apparently when she saw Nell that day in London at that London concert, she looked a mess, man. What happened was Nell had took a bunch of pills with a whole bottle of wine and was just out of it at that concert. And when Liza Minnelli saw her, she like, I gotta get you some help. And that's when they flew her to Minnesota to a rehab. And after 1 month of being there, Nell got off drugs. She got off drugs and never went back to using them, and went back to acting on the set. Give Me a Break, all clean and sober. And Give Me a Break had became a popular show years before, but around this time, the ratings was dropping. And for the last 2 seasons, they had got rid of the girls on the show and added Joey Lawrence and his brother Matthew Lawrence and Rosie O'Donnell to the show, moving it from California to New York. Now, some say that Nell and Joey Lawrence didn't get along, but in an interview, he said Nell treated him like a son. He loved her like a second mom. They also say that her and Rosie O'Donnell didn't get along either on the set. But the ratings on the show Give Me a Break started to get low, especially when the Cosby Show came around to NBC. So once Cosby took over, they had to cancel Give Me a Break. The show was over. But overall, her time on that show, she earned Golden Globe and Emmy nominations on that show. The show ran for 6 seasons on NBC, ending in 1987. Once it was all over, Nell sold her house in Beverly Hills and moved to Manhattan, and ended up joining comedian Joan Rivers on a 5-month national tour, singing in nightclubs. She never stopped working, and she continued to appear on TV shows like 227, Roseanne, Amen, and many more. Now, In 1989, she performed the Star Spangled Banner at Game 4 of the World Series in San Francisco, but then her brother, who was her best friend growing up and all her life, ended up dying from AIDS, and that really devastated her too. And when he died, she and her husband, who was separated at the time, George Kronicki, they decided to try to work things out because she wanted to have kids. So she moved back to Los Angeles. But, she ended up having 3 miscarriages though in the process. And she blamed her husband. And once she started blaming him for having the miscarriages, the divorce was finalized after 10 years of being separated and getting back. But it was over after that once she started blaming him for the miscarriages. And once she figured out she couldn't have any more kids on her own, she decided to adopt. And she adopted 2 infant boys. Now, it was reported that she tried to adopt more kids, and she even let a young pregnant woman live with her with the plan that she would adopt that child, but the mother changed her mind and decided to keep her baby. And another time, she tried to adopt another child, but the birth parents wanted money before they would sign the adoption papers. But she did adopt 2 boys that she cherished and loved. Now, in 1990, she landed a role on the CBS show called You Take the Kids, which was supposed to be like a black version to the sitcom Roseanne. I didn't know rapper Mos Def played her oldest son on that sitcom, but it didn't last long. After 6 episodes, the show ended up being canceled due to poor ratings. You can see some episodes on YouTube if y'all want to check that out too. In 1992, she did the voice of Vivian on the Robin Harris animated comedy Baby Kids. She was the Vivian voice on there. That same year, she had got married again to a Canadian record producer, this time named Roger LaRock, but that didn't last long either. They got divorced like months later. Then her grandmother died, who she adored and helped raise her. She had passed away, and then a bunch of headaches started coming her way. Literally, headaches. She started having a lot of bad headaches. Nell thought it was coming from stress and everything she was dealing with at the time. So much was going on. She was losing a lot of people. She just thought a lot of stress was going on. But the headaches were so bad that she would be in tears, she said. And she said even the tears coming down her face were painful. That's how much pain she was in from them headaches. Wow. She had to go to the hospital. And when she went to the hospital, come to find out she had 2 aneurysms on her brain that had burst. Wow, that's crazy. But she had surgery and had a good full recovery. She said when she was in the hospital, she was disappointed that a lot of her so-called friends never checked up on her. She said the only ones that called and visited her were Angie Dickinson, Sally Jesse Raphael, Joan Rivers, and Carol Burnett. But she made a full recovery because at first the doctors thought she might die, but she survived. After that, she did 42 episodes on a TV show called Hanging with Mr. Cooper as PJ Moore, the school principal. That was my show right there, man. Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Classic with Mr. Kirk. Mark Curry, Holly Robinson Pete, Omar Gooden, Raven Simone. That was my show right there. When she joined that show, she got the ratings to jump. But that was one of my favorite shows. But then she tried to get serious about her health and wanted to lose some weight because she was nearly 300 pounds. And she had got down to 250 pounds. But then she ended up gaining a lot of weight back because she had suffered from type 2 diabetes and had to take insulin injections. But she stayed in the limelight though, and she continued to stay on screen appearing in the movies called The Grass Harp and The Proprietor. But then she had to file for bankruptcy. And a lot of people close to her say that she was a very giving person when it came to money, man. She helped out a lot of people, but she had to file for bankruptcy around that time. Now, in 1997, she landed a part of Miss Hannigan in the Broadway musical play called Annie for the 20th anniversary Broadway revival. And there was a little controversy when they were promoting the commercial for the play. Now, Nell Carter was claiming racism because instead of showing her, they showed Marcia Lewis, a white actress, as Miss Hannigan. But the producers of the show claimed that the commercials were made during an earlier production and it cost too much to reshoot a newer commercial, which upset Nell, and she did put out a statement, but she was later replaced towards the end anyway, at the end of the play, because of her health problems. When one night she had collapsed on stage from a insufficient insulin shot. Wow, she had collapsed on stage. Wow, man. But after that, she continued to star on shows like Touched by an Angel, Reba, Ally McBeal. Now, in 2002, she had to file for bankruptcy again. It was saying like she owed like 1.1 million in back taxes or something like that. That same year, she wanted to help her good friend Whitney Houston after she saw her on that interview with Diane Sawyer talking about her drug problem. Because Nell been through it. And her and Whitney had been friends ever since Whitney had appeared on Give Me a Break episode back in 1984. I think she was on season 3. And Nell had reached out to everybody that was close to Whitney around that time. But she said she never heard back from anyone. Nell said she didn't want Whitney to die from a heart attack or overdose. And we all seen what happened to Whitney Houston years later. Now, she also landed a role as Mama Lena in a Broadway play called Raisin, which was a musical version of Lorraine Hansberry's play A Raisin in the Sun. But on January 23rd, 2003, Nell Carter collapsed and died at her house in Beverly Hills. And they say her 13-year-old son at the time had found her on the bathroom floor. Sad, man. He found her on the floor in the bathroom. The crazy part is, they say Nell had put in her will that she didn't want to have an autopsy done. She put that in her will that she didn't want to have an autopsy done. But the doctors, they already did the x-rays, the physical examinations, and the blood tests, and it showed that heart disease and diabetes probably was the cause of her death. She died just days before that Raisin play was about to open, man, and she was doing good too around that time because over the last year she had lost over 170 pounds. Oh man, it's crazy. You know what else is sad? They say she only had $200 to her name. Wow. That's what they say. She only had $200 in her account, man. Also, after her death, it was revealed to the public that she was in a long-time relationship with a woman named Ann Kaiser. So, but I hope her daughter, sons, and family put out a book about her life and career someday, though. We can get the real story about her life. A Nell Carter movie would be great because she inspired a lot. She inspired a lot of black female actresses, man. Who y'all think could play Nell Carter in a movie? I don't know. Man, Nell Carter, man. She was 54 years old. Rest in peace, Nell Carter.